Welcome to Dodgers Daily. Casey Porter here, joined by Austin Brubaker. It is Wednesday night in the big town. We're coming on a little bit early because I've got a basketball game to get to in Stillwater, America. A huge basketball game. If you need something to do tonight, watch OSU play DJ DeBonsa and the BYU Cougars tonight inside historic Gallagher Ibe Arena. I'm hoping it's going to be a good crowd. My beautiful bride of 26 years and I are going to head to God's country in Stillwater, Oklahoma. We're going to watch some great Big 12 basketball tonight. But Austin Brubaker, great to see your face. Great show Monday night. What's going on, man?
Yeah, Casey, first off, it's really good to be able to interact with you. I have not been paying attention at all with Oklahoma State and their basketball team. How's their basketball team going? You feeling pretty good about going into this game?
No. Number 13 team in the country, and BYU. Oklahoma State did get the first road victory in their head coach's history at Oklahoma State. The Steve Lutz, the coach, we hired him last year. That was his first road win. So this will be a huge one tonight. Oklahoma State's one of those teams that's probably the first 5 or 6 teams out right now on the outside looking in on the bubble. And so they do not have a quadrant run win, which is a win against one of the better teams. So if they could win tonight, I think that would put Oklahoma State closer to the bubble. Then they would be a team to watch down the stretch. But if they don't win tonight, it'll be tough. So they're very average right now. Could jump into that next level if they get a couple of big wins.
Okay, so when you're in this type of environment, because with me, the environment that I'm closely related to, especially because where I'm at is I'm going to a bunch of Loons games. But when you're at an Oklahoma State type of game, are you like super rambunctious? Are you yelling and screaming the entire time? Or is it just I'm just going to sit here and observe everything that's going on? What does the fan version of Casey Porter look like?
A lot different than it did 30 years ago. So I can tell you when I was younger, my wife would tell you, a matter of fact, in 2002, Oklahoma State had gone through a long period of bad football. So we had Barry Sanders. He won the Heisman Trophy in 19. We're going to get to Dodgers talk Skubal here in a minute. We're on a little bit of a tangent, and that's okay. We've spent the entire offseason talking about everything we can think about with Dodgers baseball. But just kind of give a background of how I've chilled out. So 1988, you have Barry Sanders, who wins the Heisman, Hartley Dykes, who was I think he was the number one receiver taken that year. And then you have Mike Gundy, who still is the all-time Big 12 passing leader for a career ever. The Mike Gundy that they just fired last year as the head coach. That was the team. Oklahoma State wins 10 games. They had a chance right there the last game of the year against OU to play for a national title. Could not beat OU. So it was a decade of the 1980s that I grew up in, where Oklahoma State had 3 10-win seasons. They went to big bowls, all that kind of stuff. And then Hartley Dykes and a couple other guys got them on probation. The second worst probation ever behind the death penalty to SMU. So in 1991, Oklahoma State went from 10 wins in 88 to 1990 winning 3 games, 1991 winning no games. They went 0-10-1. And so from basically 1988 to the year 2002, other than a 1 year 97 that was okay, where we went to the Alamo Bowl, it had been nothing, blanks for Oklahoma State football. So I was so excited. Played Dustin Allman in the Houston Bowl down there. And matter of fact, Tatum Bell ran one, and I looked up, and I was about 3 sections over. I got so excited. I just started running up and down the aisles, and that's how excited I used to get. Nowadays, I'm pretty quiet. I'm pretty tame. I've seen it all at this point. I've had a 30-year coaching career, and sometimes it's not fun because I've been around sports so much. You sit there and you can kind of coach it and you can predict it, and typically speaking, when you're around it a lot, you kind of know it's already coming. So I have chilled out a lot. So there's my story there. We will get into Dodgers baseball. What do you got for Dodgers baseball today?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different areas that we can go ahead and go with Dodgers baseball. First, it's really cool to be able to get a little bit of that behind the scenes type of peek at what it's not like when analyzing Dodgers baseball. I know with me, I'm still very much in the I will live and die by every single pitch that goes out there, which I know baseball players should not live and die by every single pitch, but especially down the stretch run, and especially when the Loons were playing in Lake County this past year, I was counting outs from the start of the game, worrying
when you were
about
sitting on the toilet.
I was not sitting on the toilet in Lake County. No, I'll save those for all the old 20 fans that Lake County has.
No, not literally. Not literally. Lake County has toilets in their bleachers that you can sit on.
Yes, Lake County has literal toilets that the 20 fans that showed up to those games could have sat on if they wanted to.
Lake County, that's awesome. I love it. I love just doing that to you every time.
Yeah, I know. I'm still mad at them mostly because they beat the Loons during this past
year. You'll never get over it either, by the way. If we're doing this show 30 years from now, you'll still be pissed about the same thing.
No, I'm still mad at the Cardinals for beating the Tigers in 06 when I was, 7 years old.
Never go away.
Tiger. Never go away. No,
Dodgers fans out there have all those memories of themselves too. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. That's absolutely true. So there's a little bit of news that we can go ahead and digest with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Actually, some roster moves. I think that's the thing that we should probably start off with, is because there was actually a roster move that took place from the show on Monday to what happened today is the Dodgers actually reacquired Michael Ciani into the organization. He is back on the 40-man roster for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Andy Ibanez is off of the 40-man roster now. He was just recently designated for assignment. So Michael Ciani, if you remember earlier in the offseason, was added to the 40-man roster. Very much a defensive first-minded center fielder. Actually, phenomenal numbers what he can put up defensively in center field. Based off of what I've done, if you were to average out his defensive measures to 162 and average out defensive run saved, outs above average, fielding run value, he's like a 14 outs above average type of center fielder. That is plus. That is elite. One of the better defensive center fielders in the game of baseball. In order to, I believe with Michael Ciani, in order to make room for Andy Ibanez on the 40-man roster, they decided to designate for assignment Michael Ciani. He was picked up, I believe, by the Yankees. They just recently designated him for assignment. Back he is within the organization, and the inverse kind of happened, whereas Andy Ibanez was added to the roster to remove Michael Ciani. Now Michael Ciani is added to the roster and Andy Ibanez was taken off of it. I don't know what some of your initial thoughts were before we get into some of my thoughts on where that's at, but why do you think the Dodgers made this move?
I still think so. Whenever they put Ibanez on the roster, had they gotten Tucker yet?
I don't believe they had gotten Tucker yet.
Right? Yeah. So I think at that point they were still holding up hope that. Well, I'm not wrong way to put it. I still don't think they thought they were going to get Kyle Tucker. And so at that point, I think they thought probably a pivot was going to be to get a center fielder. And then whenever they got Kyle Tucker, I think they went, you know what? Tommy Edman's not healthy. We need to go get a center fielder because now that we have Kyle Tucker, it's guaranteed he's going to be in right field. Teo's going to be in left. Andy Paez is in center. We don't have Justin Dean anymore. So now at that point, whenever your trade move or your free agency move was not for a center fielder, at that point, Michael Ciani became much more valuable than a Andy Ibanez because you need that backup insurance defensively in center field. We saw how big time it came through for the Dodgers last year. And also, Austin, I think we all have to be honest with ourselves. When the Dodgers signed Andy Ibanez, and I'm telling you, I consider this community to be kind of, one of those niche type communities because it's just the people here are just so baseball smart and they're so well versed on the moves that the Dodgers make. And they don't just look at the news. They want to know the whys and the hows and the what fors. That's what I love about this Dodgers Dogs community, the Dodgers Daily community. And I think almost to a consensus, when the Dodgers signed Andy Ibanez and then when they prioritized him, everybody in this community was like, weird. I mean, what this is a weird deal. I don't think anybody quite understood the Andy Ibanez situation. And I think as it played out, we were right. I think the Dodgers finally came to the conclusion of, I don't understand what we're doing here. Let's go get Michael Ciani. It's a need. So this is a margin situation to where Ciani and his ability to play center field became a bigger need than Andy Ibanez.
Okay, so there's a couple of different aspects with this addition. First off, I think Showtime LA had mentioned that Ciani was designated for assignment after the Kyle Tucker move, or in order to make room for Kyle Tucker. I don't remember if that's completely accurate or not, but I'll assume that Showtime LA is providing accurate information.
But they were expecting to get him back. I don't think they thought they were going to lose him.
Yes, and that's exactly where I was going to go with this. The Dodgers are clearly prioritizing the defense of Michael Ciani with this addition because you don't go ahead and bring somebody in the organization organization and then re-bring them into the organization, adding them to the 40-man roster if you don't like a specific aspect about him. And with the addition of Michael Ciani, I think this is really important because you look at the outfield defense still. And while it's not as bad as it was the previous year, I still don't think it's going to be the best outfield defense that is out there. And adding somebody that can play center field in this organization, as well as Michael Ciani has, provides something of immense value to this team, to where you could see very realistically, like Justin Dean we saw previously, him being on a postseason roster and having a very real defined role late in the games to be able to be a defensive substitution for Teoscar Hernandez, put Ciani in center field, move Andy Pages if he's hitting well over to left field, and then you feel a lot more comfortable about what your defense is. And so I think the organization, when they had initially designated Michael Ciani for assignment, were actually hoping to keep him around in the organization. 100%. Very much clear, because they went ahead and re-added him to the roster. So the question turns over to why Andy Ibanez in this specific scenario. And this gets into a lot of really niche type of discussion with this. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the signing, and let's talk about where the Dodgers mindset could be in this specific aspect. So Andy Ibanez was designated for assignment. Let's talk about what's going to happen over the next week or so with Andy Ibanez. The Dodgers have a week to do a couple of different things, or teams have a week to do a couple of different things with Andy Ibanez. One, the Dodgers could look for some sort of trade with Andy Ibanez, in which the team would likely go ahead and pick up his $1.2 million contract, try to get some sort of value if they wanted to go ahead and make a trade for Andy Ibanez. If and that's only going to happen if there's competition between teams and the Dodgers can feel like they can go ahead and get some value with him. He also is going to go through the process where he potentially could be claimed by another team, where another team just picks up his contract, picks up his option, in which another team would be on the books for the $1.2 million Andy Ibanez contract, which becomes a little bit of a question mark, because I don't know which teams are going to necessarily want to pay the $1.2 million contract for Andy Ibanez. So I think with the Dodgers mindset of what they're trying to do is they actually might be looking to keep some of the depth with Andy Ibanez within their organization by giving him a $1.2 million contract, having some insurance in depth, because I believe this was before the Kyle Tucker signing. Perhaps there's some encouragement with the Tommy Edman type of move, because with not having Andy Ibanez on the 40-man roster as of right now, perhaps this means maybe Tommy Edman, some of the progress that he's making is a little bit more encouraging, because he was going to fill that type of role early in the season, or at least that's what the expectation would be for Andy Ibanez. So you have Andy Ibanez. He could get claimed by another team or traded to another team, in which they would take his $1.2 million contract. If he is not claimed, Andy Ibanez, because he has 3 years and 133 days of service time, has two different options that he can have. He can accept an outright option to the minor leagues. He can go ahead and go to Oklahoma City. And guess what? He's going to be paid this upcoming year. He's going to be paid $1.2 million to play for Oklahoma City. That is one option that Andy Ibanez can have. Or because of the years because of the years that he has of service time, he could technically opt out of this contract and not accept an assignment to the minor leagues. However, because he does not have 5 years of service time, he would not get that $1.2 million contract. So what the Dodgers are betting, and this is, if you want to talk about areas in which the Dodgers have an advantage over other organizations, is because they can take the risk of paying 1.2 times the 110% task on a guy that very likely is going to spend a lot of time in Oklahoma City, because if he is not he's either going to be claimed by another organization, in which case they will not be due the money that Andy Ibanez is owed, or number two, he's going to be in Oklahoma. He's either going to have to accept an outright option to get the money that he is owed $1.2 million, or he's going to have to forfeit that money and go seek another organization. It's a little bit of gamesmanship, very nuanced, and that's the best that I possibly can, doing some of the research with all of that. So it's possible that the Dodgers very much wanted to keep both Andy Ibanez
Correct.
and Michael Ciani within the organization. They got Michael Ciani back, and because of the money, the contract that they have offered to Andy Ibanez might be too steep for other organizations. We'll see exactly if there's going to be another team that wants to keep him. The Dodgers might actually be able to keep both players within the organization.
Yeah, and I think they thought they were going to be able to keep Michael Ciani, and they were not able to, and obviously they wanted him back because they want – so here's a couple of things here, and by keeping both of them, now if you can send Andy Ibanez down to Oklahoma City, now you've created two different players that can both be sent to Oklahoma City because Michael Ciani has minor league options.
Yes.
So you have created a two-headed monster that both have options to send down to AAA. That is huge. That's the flexibility we're talking about on the margins that the Dodgers love to use. Okay. And then also, whenever you're talking about players that are on the margins, what makes the best role type player, Austin?
I don't know. What makes the best role type player?
What would you say? I'm asking you. This isn't a rhetorical question. I like to ask rhetorical questions. That's not one. Well, what would be your definition of what makes a good role player?
They have to have very specific skill sets that they can use. Yes.
Absolutely. Very specific fits, right? Like, okay, well, my role player, what I need a guy that can hit a left-handed pitcher. Okay.
Yes.
Well, that makes the perfect role player to go get a guy on the margins because you don't give a rat's ass how they do against right-handers. And the average fan's going, well, this guy hit 220. What the hell are you doing? Well, no, he hit 280 against lefties. Yes. So the role players, the margin players, are players that meet a specific fit. So I think the fit of flexibility for both of these guys, the fit for having insurance for Tommy Edman, and then the fit defensively in center field, which is something that you don't have right now, I think is something that the Dodgers saw a lot of value in. And then throw the cherry on top that once you get Ciani back, now if you're able to somehow able to get Andy Ibanez to accept that minor league assignment if he doesn't get picked up, which we don't think he will because we don't think anybody else is going to pick up the $1.5 million. That's why you pay him at $1.5 million because nobody else would. So he would clear waivers. Now you can get him back and have him go down to AAA. So you have the perfect fits that you're looking for on the margins, and then you also have the flexibility. It's a win, another 4D chess move for the Dodgers that you have to be honest with yourself is they're capable of doing because they have money and because they can say, $1.5 million, it's worth it to have that fit and that flexibility, right?
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. And we'll see what happens with Tommy Edman's health. We'll follow the situation with Andy Ibanez as well, because it's totally possible that he either doesn't accept an outright option to the minor leagues, wants to seek an MLB opportunity. Totally fair, totally his rights to be able to do that. Also, if another team wants to claim him, he's probably going to get a much better opportunity with another organization. So we'll see what exactly happens with that. But the Dodgers have presented a scenario where there at least is a pretty good chance where he can remain in the organization, and you get something that potentially could be of a need or could be something that could be very valuable in the postseason. We saw a valuable center field defense can be in the postseason, and we very well could see that with Michael Ciani back in the organization. We'll see what happens with Andy Ibanez. He was added to this roster, I believe, specifically for insurance with Tommy Edman. Is this good news? Tommy Edman might be a little bit healthier than what we are anticipating with the Dodgers being able to take this risk. I don't know exactly what you can read into that. Perhaps that is something you can read into a little bit more, or just the timing of being able to get Michael Ciani back, who they were hoping to remain part of the organization and now had a chance to bring back, was too good of an opportunity to be able to pass up.
Lightning bolt of a topic. Dodgers fans love Ben Rortvedt for every correct reason. I could not push back against anything that Ben Rortvedt did. I could not push back against anybody that says Ben Rortvedt was hand over heels better than Dalton Rushing last year. I can't push back against any of that. That's not my opinion. That's a fact. Is it not, Austin, from a statistical perspective?
He was slightly better overall. He was better offensively, and defensively made an impact during the short tenure that they have. And the Dodgers played him in the postseason over Dalton rushing. So that makes the biggest statement.
There's no argument to make that Ben Rortvedt was a better player than Dalton Rushing last year. And trust me, that hurts me to say because I love Dalton Rushing. And, you know, Dalton Rushing is going to be, as long as he gets the proper opportunity, okay? This is where I transition into my frustration with the Dodgers organization, and then specifically sometimes with the fans, is that, and then it's kind of a dichotomy and it's kind of a fight because it's like, well, it doesn't matter because this is the opportunity you're given, and your job is to do exactly what Ben Rortvedt did, and that is to take advantage of the opportunity you're given. Okay, so Dalton Rushing did not do that. Ben Rortvedt did. That's why he got chosen at last postseason, and that was the correct decision. We said it at the time, Austin. Go back. We have the receipts. We have not hidden behind the fact that Ben Rortvedt was the better player, period, in a discussion. There was a competition there. He won it. It's hands down. Now, we have had the conversation that from a long-term perspective, Dalton Rushing is going to be a better player than Ben Rortvedt. Ben Rortvedt wildly outproduced what anybody on earth thought he could do. And so from that perspective, the rest of the major leagues are kind of corresponding with that, if you will. It's like a rubber band. It's coming back to shape, if you will. And typically speaking, now there are times to where just something happens with a player and all of a sudden they're like this 3 or 4 times fold better player than they ever have been. But typically speaking, what you're a statistics guy, what happens to a guy is that they regress back to the mean, right? And the mean of what Ben Rortvedt always has been, likely will be in the future, is a lower bar than what I think the Dodgers feel like, what somebody like me feels like the mean will be for a Dalton Rushing. And to add on top of that, where the frustration is at, is whenever people start saying, Dalton Rushing is this, Dalton Rushing is that. And he's had literally zero opportunity to make adjustments. He's had zero opportunity to relax. He's had zero opportunities to get comfortable. He hasn't had a defined role. He has not had any kind of fair shot whatsoever to prove anything about what he could be in the future. So my defense of Dalton Rushing and why you keep him instead of Ben Rortvedt is he is going to be a better offensive player if he's given the proper opportunity to get settled in and to get comfortable to where he can actually be the Dalton Rushing that we all think he is going to be. So that would be my pushback. What say you?
Yeah, so this comes of news because the Cincinnati Reds...
And by the way,
yes, go ahead.
I would disagree vehemently about the behind-the-plate stuff. Dalton Rushing, don't ask me. Go to any of the interviews of coaches that have coached Dalton Rushing. We'll go back to my Chris Gutierrez interview. He can shut down running games. He is a leader in the meeting rooms. He's great with pitchers. He's a good framer. He's great at blocking. You didn't see that with the Dodgers because he wasn't comfortable and he wasn't getting everyday appearances. And Ben Rortvedt did a lot better job with his opportunities. But what you saw with the Dodgers is not what Dalton Rushing will be. So that's another one I will very much so push back on. Dalton Rushing is an outstanding defensive catcher. So there you go.
Yeah, there we go. So Ben Rortvedt, just for those of you who are not familiar, was recently designated for assignment by the Cincinnati Reds. Earlier in this offseason, Ben Rortvedt was on the Dodgers roster, but because he did not have any minor league options, the Dodgers decided to move off of him. They actually, I believe, were kind of trying to do the same thing that they did or are potentially trying to do with the Andy Ibanez situation, where they give him some sort of contract to be able to have. Then they went ahead and designated him for assignment, hoping that another team would not go ahead and claim him, so then they could option him down to the minor leagues, keep him within the organization, make sure that he's paid handsomely to be able to be part of this organization, but not have to be at the big league level because Ben Rortvedt does not have any minor league options. Gets claimed by the Cincinnati Reds, just recently designated for assignment because I think that's a corresponding move for them, bringing in Eugenio Suarez. So he is available for the Dodgers to potentially turn back to. But I think and I think this is the difficult thing, and the question that we have to be able to ask ourselves is not just who was better in the past. It is a question of who is going to be better in the future for the Dodgers. And let's just be fair with Ben Rortvedt as an overall career of what he has had. He has not had a great and outstanding offensive career, and his performance with the Los Angeles Dodgers was drastically outperforming what he has done in his career. Last year with the Los Angeles Dodgers, posted an 83 WRC plus, 17 points less than league average. For his career, he is a 62 WRC plus type of player. And you look at the underlying metrics of his expected stats behind that, the expected WOBAs are anywhere between the 260s to the 280s, which is well below league average as an offensive player. Defensively, he has performed well. So if you're looking specifically for somebody who has a track record of performing well defensively, Ben Rortvedt obviously was able to help the organization with that. But the question that you have to be able to ask is, what is going to be the best long-term for the Los Angeles Dodgers in their future? And if you're asking it from the perspective of the Los Angeles Dodgers, then we're going to ignore the perspective of Dalton Rushing and his development going forward, because I think that's a little bit of a different conversation, because Dalton Rushing needs to be able to get plate appearances in order to continue his development. That's a little bit of a different conversation.
It's subjective too. Everybody's going to have a different opinion. You can't prove it right one way or the other. It's just your opinion. My opinion, your opinion, everybody's opinion. Yes.
We have to look at the perspective of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and what could you potentially see, and what are some of the potential good signs with Dalton Rushing going forward as an offensive contributor as well as a defensive contributor. Defense is a lot more difficult because you're not taking into account all the different nuances of things that go in behind the scenes.
Was damn good too, man. I think that's where he made his biggest mark. He was really good with pitching.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you have to be able to look at when you're looking at Dalton Rushing as an offensive player, 62 WRC plus is not going to cut it. The one thing that is holding him back offensively is his whiff ability. That is not something that we saw at the minor leagues. His contact percentage dropped dramatically last year at the MLB level. You look at throughout his minor leagues, contact percentage consistently around 77 to 78%. Almost every single stop that he has made been around that mark. It dropped down to about 67% last year, which there probably is going to be some sort of drop, but that is a vastly dramatic drop. If he can go ahead and adjust that, there actually is some pretty solid signs for Dalton Rushing, especially in the power component for him. His barrel percentage last year was 14%. Well above league average. Pulled air percentage, 29%, only hit 33.7% of balls on the ground, which means the power absolutely is there. He's also not chasing a whole lot. It's a sub 20% chase percentage, which means that he's probably holding back on some of his swings, and especially with the inconsistencies of roles that Dalton Rushing had last year. I think it could be one of those things where he wasn't necessarily completely comfortable at the plate, not overly aggressive, and didn't have the time to be able to make the adjustments at the plate in order to succeed at the MLB level. Again, just 155 plate appearances for him. And what I don't want us to be able to do, or don't want us to do as Dodgers fans, is to give up on players in that short of a time period. Earlier in the offseason, I had made a comparison, and it's not a direct comparison because they're two very different players, and I'm not expecting them to have the exact same career. But if you look at it at the first 100 to 150 or so plate appearances with Dalton Rushing, and you compare his plate appearances with Aaron Judge, there is a lot of similarities between those two in the numbers perspective. Again, I'm not saying that they're going to be the exact same type of player, but what I'm saying is if you are so quick to give up on Dalton Rushing because of the appearances that we saw with Ben Rortvedt last year and adding him to the mix, I don't think that is a wise decision to add Ben Rortvedt for the major league roster. Now, we can have a little bit of a different conversation. I think this is where a majority of Dodgers fans are at. Yes. If you want to add him to the organization and he's willing to be the catcher at Oklahoma City and be that third catcher, I don't think a lot of Dodgers fans are going to complain. I don't think we're going to complain.
He doesn't have minor league options.
Well, and this would have to be on more of a minor league type of deal if he is willing to come back to the organization, not on the 40-man roster and spend time in Oklahoma City. And then if something happens to Will Smith or Dalton Rushing, then you have Ben Rortvedt as part of the mix. My guess is the organization, because of what Ben Rortvedt did last year, would greatly accept that. But what I don't think the organization should do, if Dalton Rushing is part of their plans, is to move off of Dalton Rushing, keep him down at the minor leagues, and only be able to call him up if there is any type of injury to the roster in the place or for a Ben Rortvedt. I think that would be a unwise long-term move for the organization, because I think the upside of Dalton Rushing is much higher than what the upside of Ben Rortvedt is at this point.
Well, you said that this year was a positive outlier for Ben Rortvedt, correct? This was better than he ever has produced. It
is about as well as he has ever produced offensively with the Dodgers.
So he showed his ceiling, what the top end of his ceiling this year, at least from what he's been in the past, correct?
That is what I'm saying, yes.
And that's an 83 WRC plus?
Yeah, he also had an 80.
Nobody on earth, okay, now this is a subjective conversation, so we're all going to have wonderful opinions, and we're all going to give them, and it's going to be a hell of a fun, spirited debate here, and nobody can be right because it is subjective. But I'm telling you, nobody will ever be able to convince me or anybody in the Dodgers organization or anybody who's ever worked with Dalton Rushing or knows anything about him. Nobody will ever be able to convince anybody that's been around Dalton Rushing that the top end of his production offensively is an 83 WRC plus. Nobody will ever be able to convince anybody that's ever been around Dalton Rushing to say, well, you know what? If Dalton Rushing has the best year he possibly can, he's going to be 17% below league average. Nobody's ever going to buy into that that's been around Dalton Rushing.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Even if you wanted to take into account some of the projection models for Dalton Rushing with him, it's around a 90 to it gets up to Zips has him as a 113 WRC plus type of player. I don't know if he gets to that. Ben Rortvedt, if you look at the projections of him offensively as a player, it ranges from 54 to about 74 is the highest projected WRC plus total for a Ben Rortvedt. So it's a different conversation with Ben Rortvedt. He had an 87 WRC plus season in 2024, but still some of the underlying metrics are not necessarily great with him. I think that's around what his cap is going to be as an offensive player, and I think there's just so much room for Dalton Rushing to be able to grow. And if you look at consistently is what the numbers that he was able to produce down at the minor leagues, which I get it. They're minor league numbers. You have to take that with a little bit of grain of salt. But 2023 in Great Lakes, 147 WRC plus. 2024 combined between AA and AAA, 146 WRC plus. Last year in Oklahoma City, 143 WRC plus. This is a player with a long track record of success at the minor leagues that was very highly touted as a prospect coming up through this organization. And I don't think 155 plate appearances with inconsistent playing time for the first time in his career is going to define the player that is Dalton Rushing. I expect a lot more for him going forward. And there's a reason why the organization did not trade Dalton Rushing when they had the chance to potentially go out and get somebody like a Garrett Crochet. You can say that was an unwise choice by the organization, but that shows you how highly touted the organization thinks Dalton Rushing is and how much they actually value him. And I think he could very well be a very key contributor to this team to be able to provide some additional rest for Will Smith, to be able to provide some additional rest for Freddie Freeman, who I know does not want to take a whole lot of rest, but for the good of Freddie Freeman and his long-term health, could very well use some rest perhaps during the course of the season at first base. And that's how you get plate appearances for Dalton Rushing. And that's where you get him close to playing 65 to 70, 75-ish games throughout the course of the season, which if you compare that to some of the plate appearances that you would get to with another organization, you might get closer to 90 to 100 just because there is some part-timeness with the catching position in general. That's when you get fairly close to what he would get with another organization. Maybe not to the exact same degree, but fairly close playing time with that. So it's an interesting conversation. Totally fair to be able to bring it up because of what Ben Rortvedt did last year. But I think we have to look in the future. And I don't want us to keep going back to the past with this team. I want the Dodgers to look forward on what the future is going to bring. And I love the future that Dalton Rushing is going to have within this organization, or just as an individual player. I think he is a special player and somebody that I really like the talent that he has.
Okay, so let me put an end to this conversation. Let me put it to bed. Listen very carefully, okay? And again, this is all opinion, and I love the fact that we're all spirited. We're all trying to get to the same direction, and I cannot, again, I'm going to say it. If you want to say Ben Rortvedt was a better player than Dalton Rushing last year, he deserved and earned every single promotion that he got over Dalton Rushing. Absolutely, you're 1,000% correct. But if you want to say the projections are that Ben Rortvedt will be the better player moving forward, that's where the conversations are going to differ. Opinions are going to be vastly different. Let me just explain how difficult it is to transition to the major leagues. Are we all happy with Will Smith? Is he a pretty good catcher?
Yeah, he's a good catcher.
Okay. Let's go back to 2019 when he broke in. His last month in Major League Baseball, Austin, listen very carefully. Will Smith, all-star, correct?
Yes, he is an all-star. He's a very good catcher.
Awesome catcher. We love Will Smith. He hit a .175 in his last month in September. He had an OPS under 600 in his last 60 at-bats in September in his first year in the major leagues. Will Smith, okay, this is Will Smith. Okay, this isn't 275. He hit a .175 in 2019. That's to end the regular season, okay? And then in the postseason, you want to know what Will Smith hit?
What's that?
0.77. Will Smith sucked so bad in 2019 that literally the Dodgers had to snatch Austin Barnes and say, Austin, come save the day. And if you remember, Austin, matter of fact, Will Smith and the offense, okay, 0.77 in the postseason, 157 in his last 57 at-bats in September in 2019. And that wasn't the worst part of his game. The worst part of his game was trying to work with pitchers and trying to figure out the defensive side. That's 2019. 2020, his first month back in, 0.77 in July of 2020. And his OPS was under the 600 again. Under 600. So for his last 2 months that he had played, OPS was under 600 in both of those months. Then to start August, 10 games in August, Austin, he was hitting a .188 with an OPS around 700. Okay, so in those 125 or so at bats for Will Smith, he was terrible. I mean, he was light years worse than what Dalton Rushing was, right? So in this day and age, if Will Smith would have been going through that patch whenever he first came up to the major leagues, and then had that patch to end his first year, and then had the terrible postseason, and then had a ridiculously bad start to the next season, in the Shohei Ohtani era of the Dodgers fans would be having the same conversation about him, about how he's a bust. That's why you can't just say, hey, here's a little bit of playing time here, here's a little playing time there, here's some not realistic opportunities here, some not realistic opportunities there, because even Will Smith can't deal with those situations. Even Will Smith was terrible at the end of his first year and the beginning of his second year. That's how hard it is to do, and that's why you have to caution against those kind of conversations.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Let's go back to the comparison that I had made, just because some of you might not be familiar with the comparison I had made. I made it on a previous show. I actually have a post up on X about it. If you search Dalton Rushing in quotation marks and Aaron Judge in quotation marks, my tweet should be the second one from the latest. If you compare the two, this is the comparison between Dalton Rushing last year and Aaron Judge in 2016. Both had a 62 WRC plus. Aaron Judge in 2016,
Yes.
179.
Yes.
Here's his triple splash line, 179, 263, 345. That equated to a 62 WRC plus. If you look at the strikeout percentage, Dalton Rushing was less than that. Chase percentage, less than that for Dalton Rushing. Whip percentage, less than that for Dalton Rushing. Barrel percentage, higher for Dalton Rushing than what it was for an Aaron Judge. This is not to say that Dalton Rushing will become Aaron Judge.
No.
Why would I say that? Aaron Judge is the best hitter in the game of baseball. He's phenomenal. What I am saying with this is to be slow with some of the conclusions that we're able to draw with each one of these players.
That's
and
all
to be
we're
able
saying.
to,
That's all we're saying.
And to be able to let the process play out, especially with the taxing position that the catching position has, and with the new circumstances that were put on Dalton Rushing. It's very possible that Dalton Rushing might not be able to hit at the MLB level. If the swing miss continues at the rate that it has last year, it's going to be very hard for Dalton Rushing to find any sort of success at the MLB level. But there are certain skill sets that he does have, and he has some sort of track record. So to be patient with that, and the upside that could potentially bring this organization is really high. I think that's what the Dodgers are looking for in this conversation. If Ben Rortvedt wants to come back and play for Oklahoma City, or if there's an injury that happens, in which case he gets presented with an opportunity, I think the Dodgers would be more than thrilled and absolutely welcome and open up the door for Ben Rortvedt. But I don't think they're going to prioritize him over a Dalton Rushing now because of what they saw in 2025, because it's very likely that what we saw in 2025 was the best version of what we saw with Ben Rortvedt, and what we saw in 2025 with Dalton Rushing was about as bad as we could see.
Yeah.
And what happens when those even out? What happens when the median is actually hit? I think it's a better situation for the Dodgers to have Dalton Rushing, even with the flexibility that he has, being able to go up and down if needed.
And as Jay's saying, and that's even not with an even runway. Like Aaron Judge came in, he got the chance to play every day and be a regular major leaguer and fail and fall on his face and get back up and make the adjustments, that kind of thing. Dalton Rushing didn't get that. And so let me make a couple of comments before we get out of here. Not get out of here, but get off of this topic and get into something else. I'm just going to say this point blank. Being the number one prospect in the Dodgers organization is hard. It is. I hate it. I mean, this is why I hate top prospects list. This is why I hate hype. I don't mean to sound like get off my lawn, dude, okay? But I love these guys. I want to see every one of these guys excel, and just putting undue pressure. And to be honest with you, it's like whenever you get a 5-star recruit. Well, I don't know what fans are expecting, but it's never what they get out of that player. They're expecting something short of human, right? So when you're Dalton Rushing and you're the number one player in the Dodgers system, he can say all that he wants, and he didn't necessarily hide behind it whenever I asked him that question in our interview. But they can try to say, oh, we don't think about it, oh, this and that. Bull, okay? Being the Dodgers' number one prospect is hard, especially when you go up, you're supposed to be this perfect player. So everybody, instead of evaluating you as just a rookie that, hey, maybe they can fill in a hole somewhere and help the team somewhere along the way, which is the way they evaluated Ben Rortvedt. The Dodgers fans didn't evaluate Ben Rortvedt by, okay, well, is he as good as Freddie Freeman? They didn't evaluate Ben Rortvedt like, oh, we're bringing up the Dodgers' number one prospect. He's supposed to be perfect. That's not how they evaluated Ben Rortvedt. So Ben Rortvedt was playing with house money. He could relax. He had nothing to lose, okay? But when you're the Dodgers' number one prospect, okay, and everybody's expecting you to hit 400 right out of the gate and never fail and look perfect right off the bat, I can tell you that is a big burden to carry, okay? That's why I try not to hype any of these guys up way too much. That's why I like to try to calm it down. Like, man, let's just chill and let these guys just develop. Everybody has a different time frame. Everybody has a different timetable. Let's just chill and let each player develop to be the best version of themselves on their timetable, okay? So that's another argument I'm making with Dalton Rushing. And then I will finish with this, kind of a tough conversation. Everybody who's critical of Dalton Rushing, I have no issues with it, because point blank, if it's fair, if it's not fair, runway, no runway, Inconsistent playing time, none of it matters, Austin. The Dodgers have Will Smith. The Dodgers have Freddie Freeman. They are not trading Dalton Rushing. So Dalton Rushing has to figure out, how do I deal with being the Dodgers' number one prospect? How do I deal with getting criticism because I'm not living up to the hype? And then how do I deal with the role that I'm given and become the best version of Dalton Rushing that can actually make an impact on this team? Nothing else matters. That's the only thing that matters. Can Dalton Rushing figure that last piece out?
Yep, yeah, that's absolutely right. I think both of those conversations hit on some really key points. Baseball is hard enough in and of itself. To be combined that with the additional external pressures that get put on some of these very young kids as they're coming up through the system can sometimes be overwhelming for them at times. And especially when you're coming into an organization which has as high of pressure, as high of expectations as the Los Angeles Dodgers have. They have the highest of expectations in Major League Baseball, and that is a good thing because that means you expect the best for your team, you expect the best for your organization, and that can be very difficult. That's a very difficult pressure to be able to put on young players coming up through their system when they're trying to be able to develop very certain skill sets as they're coming up and just be part of the development process. And I think we need to at least be careful with how we do that. And I think with the coverage that we do here, we try to make sure that you guys are highlighted on all the different players that are coming up through the system. But what we try to do is not just highlight individual players. We try to highlight every single player that is worthy of some sort of discussion because they have earned it. And if Dalton Rushing earns a role or earns a spotlight, we're going to go ahead and shine that spotlight on him. If a Josue Apollo or a Zaire Hope gets a spot or performs well, we're going to shine the spotlight because they have been performing well. But we're also going to do that for some of the players that maybe don't get as much of a prospect intrigue, prospect coverage, because we want this to be as much of an earned type of deal as it is with we're just going to highlight all of the best different guys. So that's just a little bit of philosophical difference that we have, and what we try to do here.
What a conversation. This is fun, man.
It's a really fun conversation. I also think the second point that you had with Dalton Rushing, when it comes to, you got to find a way to be able to figure things out with the role that you have been given. And that's absolutely right.
If I was his dad, that's what I'd be telling. Sorry, brother. Yep. Hey, bro, what do you want me to tell you? You want me to sit around and feel sorry for you? I mean, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to tell you? Right.
And I will be fascinated to be able to see how Dalton Rushing be able to take that, because the Dalton Rushing that I saw in 2023 in Great Lakes, highly fiercely competitive. And that is the player that the Dodgers are hoping to be able to get. And somebody who, man, has some experience, at least at the catching position, not being the primary catcher. If you go back to his days when he was at Louisville behind Henry Davis, first couple of years with that. Now he had the opportunity to play a little bit more first base, but he's going to have to adapt to the role that he has, and just wait for Dalton Rushing to be able to play, wait for him to be able to be able to make the adjustments back to the major leagues, because there is something in there. And if the Dodgers can get that something that is in there with Dalton Rushing to be able to come out, watch out for the rest of Major League Baseball. You don't just have a backup catcher. You have a really talented backup catcher that has the ability to be able to hit for above league average MLB, and potentially even more than that if he is able to continue with the development that he has.
So for the 11th time now, here's my final point.
Yeah, there you go.
So the Dodgers moved away from Diego Cartaya, right? Yes, they did. They prioritized Ben Kasparius over Bobby Miller, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. They prioritized Jack Dreyer over everybody. Okay. They prioritized. They threw Justin Robleski out in Game 7. Okay. Landon, get a load of this. Okay. Landon, of the young guys that we've been talking about for like 4 years now, pitchers wise, the guys that actually have pitched in a World Series are Ben Kasparius, Landon Knack, Justin Robleski, and Jack Dreyer. I mean, Jack Dreyer is an undrafted free agent. Come on, right? I mean, Ben Kasparius came out of nowhere, okay? These are guys that Justin Robleski came out of absolutely nowhere, okay? So my final point on this is, if it comes time to move away from a Dalton Rushing, okay, like the Diego Cartaya situation or whatever it may be, I promise you they will, okay? Yep. And they do not miss on these situations. So if there's any doubt, if you want to have a tiebreaker in this conversation, the tiebreaker is the Dodgers' track record. They have done a great job of knowing which prospects to trade away, like a Jeter Downs that flamed out, which prospects to keep, which prospects to move off of, like Diego Cartaya, and which prospects, generally speaking, to keep. And so I will default and defer to the Dodgers' track record of it. Let them determine when it's time to move on for Dalton Rushing or what's best for them. That's kind of what I'm saying there, too.
Yep, I trust the organization. I trust Andrew Friedman to be able to make the right calls. I also, at this point, have nothing to do but to trust Dalton Rushing with the track record that he has going forward and what the potential that he has.
Okay, so Tarik Skubal, we've been talking about him for a while. I'm going to say this. So we're going to get out into the weeds here. I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat, okay, and we're going to have a hell of a lot of fun because, honestly, there are no facts in this. You could go into Billy Gasparino or Andrew Friedman or Brandon Gomes. Or, by the way, I talked to Dodger scout today, Brian Kraft. I'm going to release his interview. We're going to release his interview on Sunday night's show, and we're going to talk over it together. He talks about all the guys that he signed in the system. He went to OSU. He knows Billy Gasparino very well and all the guys in the system. So be looking forward to that Brian Kraft interview on the Sunday night show. He's going to kind of act as the co-host for me there. So there's really no facts on this. This is just all conjecture and okay, what do you think type of stuff, because that's the stage it's in. So to me, for the Tarik Skubal deal for Roki Sasaki, a couple things. It feels to me like they're prioritizing Emmett Sheehan over Roki Sasaki. It feels like, number two, they kind of liked Roki Sasaki in relief, and they know they have to pitch him in as a starting pitcher because they promised him that. And they think between, hey, we kind of like we like him in relief, we're going to have to pitch him as a starter, that starter reliever type of guy, it feels to me like they are more willing to give up Sasaki than they are Sheehan. Am I way out in the weeds here?
Okay, so you want to talk a little bit of background of what necessarily is going on with Tarik Skubal, where the conversation of Roki Sasaki is coming into some of this conversation. Is this more just this was potentially an idea that was kind of floated out there? There's not really a whole lot of buzz, because what is happening with Tarik Skubal right now is he is, I believe today, went through a part of an arbitration hearing with the Detroit Tigers. So if you're not familiar, Tarik Skubal and the Detroit Tigers are way off on an agreement for the contract that he should get for the 2026 season. The arbitration process, a little bit of back and forth that teams and players can have to decide what the contracts is going to be. Tarik Skubal wanted a record deal for starting pitchers because back-to-back American League Cy Young Award winner. He requested a $32 million contract, while the Tigers decided to offer him a $19 million contract. And what he went through today is he went through an arbitration court, and the court has to decide not somewhere in the middle of those two numbers, which probably would be the fair number between the two of them. But the arbitration court has to decide whether to reward Tarik Skubal $32 million or $19 million. If it's $19 million, for whatever reason, and don't ask me as somebody who lives in the state of Michigan and follows the Detroit Tigers to a certain extent, they seemingly have some sort of self-restricted salary cap that they have to where they're not going to make any moves unless Tarik Skubal only gets the $19 million that he has. In part, probably because of the TV deal that they are in a little bit of limbo in right now, so there's some money that's not necessarily coming in. But Tarik Skubal is going to have to, there's a decision that's probably going to be made tomorrow, or at least it's going to be announced tomorrow, whether he's going to be making $32 or $19 million. If it's $32 million, the Tigers have a choice whether to keep him and not really make any
I think
additional.
It's going to be the 32. What do you think?
If I had to guess, that would probably be my guess, only because
if I had to guess,
the record or the record deal that I think that was given to a pitcher was set at $19.5 million, but that was a good decade ago to David Price as a starting pitcher, and I think it's probably closer to what Tarik Skubal's type of estimate as opposed to the Detroit Tigers type of estimate, which means that if it is the $32 million. Perhaps it is something where the Dodgers or the Tigers.
I'm rooting for the 32. Maybe that's me. I'm rooting for it because the Dodgers will be one of the only teams in that market if it's 32.
Yes. If then the Tigers are in a spot where they haven't made a ton of additions to this roster. They made a couple of relief pitching. They haven't added anybody to the offense. It's been very disappointed on the offensive side. They have to take a serious evaluation of if they can't make any external signings to the roster, do they expect to be able to win a World Series in the 2026 season, the last year of Tarik Skubal's contract, which if you go to arbitration court with a $13 million gap, there's no way that Tarik Skubal is re-signing with the Detroit Tigers.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
no.
No,
he's
way
a one-year player for Detroit.
He is a one-year player.
So if you can't win it this year, then there's no reason to have him and not get something for him.
And that's where some of the conversations are able to come up. That is what is going on with the Tarik Skubal. So the question for the Los Angeles Dodgers are, do you just sit back and wait, and do you try to be desperate? Because if you're the Dodgers, you do not necessarily need Tarik Skubal to be added to this team. Tarik Skubal is one of the best pitchers in the game of baseball, if not the best pitcher in the game of baseball, and would absolutely be something where the Dodgers would look to be opportunistic if available, but is not something that they necessarily need. And so I think they're kind of just waiting in the weeds, and we're all waiting in the weeds to be able to see what happens with this arbitration hearing. It's a fascinating case just in the game of baseball. 19 versus 32. If it's 19, I expect the Tigers fully to be able to hold on to him, probably make an external addition to the roster and go ahead and go into the season. But if it's the $32 million, that's where it becomes a little bit of a question mark. And I think if you look at teams around the league that would be willing to take on a $32 million contract like that, the Dodgers are one of the few teams that I believe that would take on that type of deal for Tarik Skubal, or at least had a track record of taking on that type of deal for him.
So the Dodgers are never desperate, even when they have a need. Like they needed Edwin Diaz, right? They needed Shohei Ohtani, but still they're never desperate. Okay, they're never just going to give up their entire farm. They're always going to make it an intelligent financial deal, whatever it may be. So there is a huge difference between being desperate and being urgent. Like somebody who's urgent just kind of raises their energy level. You get a little bit more keen in your focus. You make sure that you make fewer mistakes. All those you're just a little bit sharper, okay? As somebody who's desperate's taking chances and willing to just fall on your face. Like I give an example. Like let's say that you're down 9-0 with 20 seconds to go in a wrestling match. Okay, well, so a wrestler that's desperate is going to try a headlock. Okay, and headlocks never really land very often, but it's the only chance you have, because the only chance you have in that match is if you throw that headlock, get your opponent to their back and pin them, because you can't make up enough points to get to the 9 points. Well, you damn well know that if I throw a headlock, I'm more likely to be the one up on the bottom and getting myself pinned than pinning the other guy, because it's such a hard move to execute. Well, my coach would tell me, you know what, Casey, I don't care. Coach Holt would tell you, I don't care if you get pinned. I don't care if you lose 9-0. What's the difference? You lost either way, right? So that's desperation. Urgency is, okay, well, let's execute what we're good at, but let's make sure that we're focused in, we find the right position to make the right shot, and we have the right the amount of work put into it, and we have a laser focus and laser execution. That's urgency. That's the way the Dodgers operate, not desperation. So it's going to be a situation to where the Dodgers will not give a desperate offering to the Tigers. They wouldn't even give up Dalton rushing. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Again, it's just floating around. But I will say, when you have a chance to get one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, when you have a chance to get one of the best players, and they are in the ballpark of something that you can afford and buy, well, that's something you don't turn down, man. It's just not. I mean, if you have the ability to buy something, it's within reason of your budget, and it is literally the greatest thing out there, I'm one that I don't say you pass up on that.
It's fair enough. We've seen situations where the Dodgers have been more. We go back to the example that we used earlier in the show with the Garrett Crochet. They were a little bit more timid in that situation, not wanting to give up individual players. So it is something where the Dodgers have made conscious choices to where they set certain parameters, they set certain limits of what they're wanting to do. And if it goes beyond that limits, or if another organization wants a little bit more than what the Dodgers are willing to give up, the Dodgers have done a lot of the calculations, and they say, you know what? I think we're going to be fine at this point. And for the 2024 season, it worked out for the Dodgers. Now, it was not pretty for the starting pitching during the 2024 postseason. Obviously, there was a lot of injuries that happened. The Dodgers could have used a Garrett Crochet, but they still ended up winning the World Series at that point. Last year, at the trade deadline with the bullpen, they had the resources to go out and get the best option that was available. Probably Yohan Duran would have been the best option that was available. They decided not to go on that. It was not necessarily pretty, but they were still able to get the job done. I think what we have to be able to do with the Dodgers, and this is not to say that is the best strategy to be able to go forward. What I'm saying is there are certain parameters that the Dodgers want to go ahead and set for themselves, and they want to make sure that they're doing the correct decision. So the question is, how much would you be willing to give up, and how much of a need is this going to be? And this becomes a little bit of a question mark, because I think we have to potentially ask ourselves, and I think this is where we could get a very real conversation of the Dodgers could use somebody like a Tarik Skubal, not just because he's one of the better pitchers in the game of baseball. And obviously the Dodgers are looking to be able to add as much talent as they possibly could be. But this is something I talked about the show on Monday, especially with some of the potential concerns that you could have with Blake Snell coming out of Dodger Fest with some of his potential surgery to his shoulder, is what is our actual expectations and health, and who's going to be some of the workhorses, and do the Dodgers have enough depth as a starting pitching staff to where they just dilute all of the innings pitched between the depth that they have, and they don't necessarily need that workhorse? Because you go up and down this rotation. Let's go up and down the rotation just to be able to see how this roster is constructed. Tyler Glasnow, you're not going to expect him to be a workhorse. He is max probably 120 innings pitched at the major league level. Shohei Ohtani, probably not a workhorse coming back of injury, or at least if you could avoid that at all possible, that's what you would expect.
Well, he's not pitching in the World Baseball Classic. What does that tell you?
It means that he's trying to go out there and
he's workload managing.
Yes. Roki Sasaki missed a good part of last year. Emmett Sheehan coming back from injury. Blake Snell, some concerns that he potentially could have. Yoshinobu Yamamoto pitched a ton, 211 innings combined between regular season and the postseason last year, and is going to be pitching in the World Baseball Classic. Down at the minor leagues, River Ryan and Gavin Stone are coming back from injury. You also have Landon Knack, Justin Robleski, some guys coming up through the minor leagues. I think they have enough depth, but they don't necessarily have that one guy that is going to be we are going to rely on this guy to be able to go out there and throw 160, 170, 180 innings pitched, which is fine if you're able to dilute some of the innings pitched between all of those guys. But the question is, can you go ahead and do that? Or do you want to go ahead and get somebody to where, with the Tarik Skubal, especially if you're only anticipating him being able to be around for one year, which I don't know would be the case if you're the Los Angeles Dodgers, because if you're going to give up a heavy prospect package, you probably would want to have more than just the 1 year to be able to attach to that. If you wanted to go ahead and get Tarik Skubal for 1 year, he is somebody that at least has a little bit more of a track record of being able to take on heavy innings, although he has dealt with some injuries in his past before. So I think it is something where you have to take an honest assessment of where you are at starting pitching. Can you get through 162 plus have your main starters be healthy, ready to go for the postseason? And if that is something where the Dodgers have concerns with Blake Snell, have concerns with the Yoshi Yamamoto, and you want another ace, Tarik Skubal is well within the price range of what the Dodgers potentially could go out and get. And it depends on what the price actually is with the Tigers. I don't think the Dodgers are going to be desperate, as we talked about earlier, to be able to go out and get him. But if it's relatively reasonable, I think there could be something where the Dodgers could talk themselves into it.
Here's the point that Jay's making. This is the point to make. This is the only point to make. As long as we're in the ballpark of Skubal is staying with the Tigers, the Dodgers don't need to be anxious to go to get him. Correct?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
They don't need him. They've got plenty of pitching. Even if Blake Snell isn't available to begin the year, even if you have workload management with Shohei Ohtani, you still got Gavin Stone and River Ryan. You're still going to win 110 games. Likely, you're going to be projected to. Okay. Even in that scenario without Skubal. So as long as you feel like the Tigers are not in position to trade Skubal, then you just sit on your hands, okay? Yeah. Now, the second that you feel like they're getting ready to trade Skubal, here's the problem, Austin.
Yes.
If they trade him to the Phillies, if they trade him to the Mets, if they trade him to anywhere on the West Coast, okay, I sure as hell don't want to face Tarik Skubal, and I damn sure don't want to face him in the playoffs. So if at that point you feel like he's getting ready to get traded to somebody in the National League, first of all, if you feel like he's getting ready to get traded, then especially if you feel like he's getting ready to get traded to somebody in the National League, that to me is where he becomes a need and not a want, because you need to not face him in the playoffs.
Okay, I think that's fair enough to be able to make that type of argument. I would still put up the Dodgers roster even against a Tarik Skubal on another organization to be able to have to go. Oh, absolutely. It would be much better to be able to do that. But if you're talking about a ridiculous price to be able to go get him, what I think back to is somebody like a Mason Miller being traded to the San Diego Padres last year for one of the top couple of prospects within Major League Baseball, or at least by consensus, and Leo DeVries, very talented player with him. That was a huge price to be able to go out and get. And you can make the argument, man, I don't want to face Mason Miller in the postseason. He is dominant and electric and could very well be better than a Yohan Duran that was traded last year. Several years of team control with that. The question is, do you meet the well above asking price when you're already going to be favored in a particular series, and when you already have the starting pitching that could go pretty close to match, and an offense that is as good as the Los Angeles Dodgers? Is it necessarily a need at that point? That's where there could be some question marks, some back and forth. But certainly, you don't want him to go into another team that could potentially rival you in the National League, or any other team, I guess, but primarily the National League. If you're looking at the National League West, I don't think the Padres have the prospect capital, because they have traded away a bunch of it to be able to go ahead and acquire him. Nor do I think that any other team in the National League West, even with Tarik Skubal, would go ahead and rival the Los Angeles Dodgers. So I'm not necessarily worried about interdivision, where it can become a little bit of a question mark. I'm not worried about
the division ever. The Dodgers will be fine there.
Yeah, where you could have a little bit of question mark. Okay, what happens with let's say you had mentioned the Mets, if they go ahead and acquire him, which they could potentially have the prospect capital to be able to do so. I'm just not sold completely on the Mets' depth as a complete roster as of yet, to be able to be completely concerned about that, or at least the Dodgers' ability to be able to have. Certainly fascinating conversations, things that we don't get access to behind the scenes. And there's a lot of things.
No, you can do the math. I mean, you don't need behind the scenes to say, okay, well, the Dodgers have this prospect and that, what's it going to take? You don't need math to know that you don't want to face him if he's with the Mets or the Phillies, I mean, that kind of thing.
Fair enough.
And also, he's going to be 30 years old this time next year. You can also do the math that the last thing you're going to want to do is give him a 10-year contract. Now, he may want to do the Kyle Tucker thing. We thought Kyle Tucker was going to want a 10-year contract. So you may play those cards too. But for the people saying wait till you to get him in free agency, that's a tricky deal, because then instead of giving up prospects, you're likely giving up years of service, and all indications are going to be it's going to be a very lengthy contract to get Tarik Skubal well into the back 30s of his back 30s. I'm not good. I that's the one thing I don't like, are long contracts. I'm still shocked that Kyle Tucker came back to the 4-year deal. It would be a massive disappointment for Tarik Skubal, I think, if he came back to like a 4-year deal. So you can say, hey, wait till free agency, but do you really want to go sign a 10-year contract for Tarik Skubal until he's 40 years old? And then here's another point. How many prospects are worth a world championship, right? I mean, if I could tell you today, I'm going to trade this prospect, and it's going to guarantee me a world championship, how much is that package worth? Quite a bit, right?
Yeah, you do that every single day, because nothing beats a World Series championship.
Well, why do you have prospects if it's not to win a World Series? Mm-hmm. Why do you have a minor league system?
It is either to utilize them as players to be able to help your cause to be able to go out and win a World Series championship, or to utilize them to be able to get other players that can go ahead and help you win a World Series championship. I think you need a mix of both to be able to do that. But if you can guarantee a World Series championship, that's what you do to be able to go out and win. You do whatever you can.
So this is an interesting point from Craig, and I happen to agree with him. The Roki Sasaki thing, this is just the latest rumor. We have no inside information. We're just going with kind of what's floating around there and having a conversation about it, and probably trying to squash it. We squashed the Emmett Sheehan deal for Freddie Peralta and that kind of deal. So I think this is a great point. First of all, Roki Sasaki, he came through big time last year. Second of all, you've just cornered the Asian market, right? And then third of all, you promised Roki Sasaki The reason why he came here was because he felt like the Dodgers were the best organization to allow him to develop. Well, if you cut all of that rug out from underneath him, you've also cut your nose out to spite your face, because now you've just pissed off the entire Asian market. The Asian market that's allowed you to have an Ohtani economy for the last 3 years, that's allowed you to be so aggressive to win all your world championships. So to deal Roki Sasaki and to play that Russian roulette with the Asian market absolutely is not worth it for me.
Yes, and I think this comes from I don't think it even comes from necessarily a rumor. I think this came from some sort of trade proposal. I think there was a trade proposal that was put out there with Tarik Skubal, and it had Roki Sasaki as part of that in place of an Emmett Sheehan, which I think if you're put yourself in the mindset of the Detroit Tigers, I think they would much rather take an Emmett Sheehan over Roki Sasaki at this point, just because of the place of where Roki Sasaki is in his development.
Correct.
He's still very much
more plug and play. It's more plug and play.
He is very much is a work in progress if you're Roki Sasaki at the major league level, because last year during the regular season wasn't necessarily great. You're still looking for that third or fourth pitch to be able to help make his arsenal just that much better. Otherwise, he has had some success, and even in the postseason, there was some underlying metrics that suggest, hey, maybe they're not necessarily. There is a little bit of luck that was involved because he wasn't striking guys out much at all during the postseason this previous year. So I think if you're the Detroit Tigers, if you were to choose one, I think you would choose Emmett Sheehan, because you were looking for somebody to be able to plug into the rotation and still be able to compete, as well as some external additions. And with the Dodgers and Roki Sasaki, I think you had mentioned it. I think they did a lot of things in order to be able to go out and get a Roki Sasaki. And there's a lot of investment that is able to have, and so many good things that come from having all these different players over from Asia, over from Japan, and I think having Roki Sasaki as part of that mix is such a good thing. And I think they're in a unique position where they're an organization that can go ahead and help develop Roki Sasaki because of the time that they've invested in him at this point, to where, man, it would be at least a little bit more of a project for other teams to be able to take him on at this point, to where I don't think that would be part of the trade package.
So did Sasaki do a pretty good job in relief at the end of last year?
During the postseason, it's hard to argue with his .84 ERA that he had at least the results wise. It's hard to argue with the ERA results that he has. Yeah.
So how much would you pay for that? If I were to say, okay, we're going to go acquire a reliever at the trade deadline to give us an .084 ERA in the postseason to help us win a World Series, how much do you pay for that?
If I could guarantee an .84 ERA, that's worth a very, very pretty penny to be able to go ahead and acquire somebody like that.
And what kind of contract is Sasaki on?
He's on the minor league. He's
and I agree that we're giving air to something that's really stupid in this conversation about Sasaki and the Dodgers moving on from. I get it. I'm doing it just to show how stupid that argument actually is. And just hey, anybody who's wanting to say the Dodgers are getting ready to get rid of Roki Sasaki, to go get anybody. This is how stupid that argument sounds to me. That's kind of why I'm going over this. Now, you might disagree with me, but that's where I'm at on that. Or is that where you're at?
I'm in the place where I think there is still a lot of room for Roki Sasaki to be able to grow, to where I don't think he is a centerpiece in any type of deal for a Tarik Skubal, because I don't think it's exactly what the Detroit Tigers are potentially looking for. I think they're looking for MLB ready type of players to be able to help their organization. And I think with Roki Sasaki, one of the reasons why I was very clear with my answer to you about are we just basing it off of the .84 ERA is because if you look at his FIP and expected FIP during that postseason, because his strikeout percentage was about 14% during the postseason, the underlying metrics of some of the results weren't as good of what the actual results were on the field. And all that's to say is that there's still a lot of room for Roki Sasaki to be able to grow. So immediately putting him in some type of trade package would probably be selling short on what Roki Sasaki and what his future could be, because the Dodgers gave up pretty much all of their international bonus pool money in order order to get a Roki Sasaki. They traded some players in order to get international bonus pool money. They traded Arnaldo Lantigua over to the Cincinnati Reds organization for $1 million in international bonus pool money, a good prospect within the Reds organization who probably will be playing for the Dayton Dragons after this, either this upcoming year or the next year. They made a pretty heavy investment in Roki Sasaki. They made some good. They are really good at trying to keep to their word, and I think they're going to try to keep to their word with Roki Sasaki.
Yes, absolutely. It's like Paul Skeens is with the Pirates. Perfect. Keep him there. Right? As soon as you think Paul Skeens is going to be with somebody you have to beat in the postseason, okay, this is the problem at that point. So hey, I got to get with my beautiful bride. We've got to head to God's country in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and watch some Big 12 basketball. Tune that in tonight on ESPN. Root on my Cowboys. We need all the energy we can get, even through the streaming screen or TV screen, whatever you're looking for. We need to beat BYU tonight. Come on, everybody, be an OSU Cowboy fan. Hey, fascinating conversation. Everybody, you talk about an elite chat. The chat here at Dodgers Daily is so diverse, and it's so differently opinionated, and it is so passionate. But it is so intelligent, Austin. Yeah. I want to give everybody in the chat an absolute A+, standing ovation. What an incredible job y'all did on the chat today. Great job. Thank you so much for providing. Hey, Austin and I, we try to put as much time as we can to get into these shows. But whenever the chat's as good as it was today, it just takes it to a whole different level. All you wonderful Dodgers dogs in the chat today, thank you so much. What a wonderful job you did. Austin, final thoughts.
Yeah, really great things with the chat. Can't thank you guys enough. One more thing I wanted to be able to talk about, just because it was talked about briefly or previewed a little bit on our show. When John Vicari, play-by-play announcer for the Loons, came on the show, he had given a little bit of a hint. The Loons were releasing a new alternate identity. Casey, I don't know if you had the chance. Have you seen the Loons' new alternate identity that they actually released yesterday? So if you have not had the chance to be able to see it, the Great Lakes Loons released their new alternate identity, the Michigan Dogmen, which, if you are not familiar with that, is actually a local legend that is in the state of Michigan. It's the Michigan Dogman is what it is. It's a wolf-like human creature that's able to go ahead and wander the woods in Michigan. Well, that is coming to life, and you can go ahead and get your merch now, loons.milbstore.com. I don't know if you have all of or if you could show like a picture or whatever of what's going on with the Michigan Dogmen before you have to go. But so
can a Dogman climb a tower buzzer?
Yes, absolutely. It could. Michigan
Can it run as
Dogman.
fast as a comet?
Yeah, absolutely. It could.
Okay. All right, just curious.
Yeah,
Those are all
just
minor
curious.
league days. That was a stupid comment to make, so there you go.
No, there was a lot of work that get put into that. So if you have not had the chance to be able to look that out, would highly encourage you. Really fun stuff that's going on over there. I can't thank you guys enough for being able to tune into the show. Super excited about baseball. We're just about a week until pitchers or catchers are reporting, which means we're about 2 weeks until spring training games are actually starting, which means it's almost time for Dodgers baseball.
Friday night?
Friday night.
Okay. See you Friday night in the big town. And as always, it's a great day to be a Dodger. Thank you again, Dodgers Dogs.